Let's go around the room. Does everyone? Well, let's go around the room just for the sake of because we have a couple of new people in here. I'm Mary Louise Madigan. I serve the East End Ward 4, and I am chair of the Housing Committee.
Amy Hall, Legislative Liaison.
I'm Monique Smith, Council at Large.
David Anderson, Councilman Ward 1.
Kevin Butler, Law Director.
Saul O'Donnell, Assistant Law Director.
Jeff Ashby, Assistant Director of Public Safety.
Do you wanna? Thanks. So we only have one item on the agenda tonight, and it is a communication from formerly known as Councilman Summers, now known as Mayor Summers, but it was referred to housing at the end of September 20th, and it's regarding enhancing our nuisance ordinances to really address commercial properties. And I believe at the time we might have met on this once. We got some direction, but we knew we wanted to have a little bit more from law, and since then we've had a change in the law department. And Law Director Butler, I believe if you are prepared, and I think you and I have touched base a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, the mayor put a communication out when he was a council member asking council to look into the issue of whether or not a chronic nuisance ordinance codified in chapter 510 of the Lakewood codified ordinances was doing enough to prevent multiple occurrences of nuisance activities on commercial property. And so in anticipation of this meeting, we've got Andrea Rocco, who's the mayor's executive assistant and attorney, who handles the nuisance complaint, the declaration and complaint and appeals process. Saul O'Donnell, who helped draft the 2008 legislation revising dramatically the chronic nuisance ordinances. Frankly, there are only two ordinances. There's the ordinance that governs what a chronic nuisance condition is, and the process the city takes in order to enforce, in order to go after property owners for chronic nuisances. And then the second ordinance is merely the ordinance that sets up the Board of Appeals, which hears owners and the cities, I suppose, if the city wanted to appeal, owners' appeals from decisions of the administration to levy fines against those owners who have not abated the nuisance conditions. So Saul's here as well. Now, in anticipation of this meeting, my first inclination was to figure out whether or not we really did have a problem in Lakewood. And I will tell you that, so I started from the question of, the mayor's communication would suggest that commercial establishments are routinely adding to this database of chronic nuisance conditions and merely paying the fines when they're levied as a cost of doing business, but continuing to add to the database. That would be the suggestion made by the former councilman's communication. And I wanted to see if that was true. And actually, as it turns out, I mean, I think that communication obviously was very well intentioned. I don't think that that really is what's happening on the whole. There are, Andrea provided me a list of all of the nuisance letters that have been sent, all properties, 222 of them since the inception of the process. And only in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 situations of those 222, only 5 were commercial establishments that had more than one nuisance declaration letter sent. So So to be very, very blunt and honest, I think this process is working very well. The other establishments that have had multiple nuisance letters sent per address would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 residences.
Pardon
Which
me?
would suggest to
Say
me that
again.
out of 222 properties whose owners received letters advising them of a chronic nuisance condition, 14 of them in total were repeat offenders. The other 206, 8 received a nuisance letter and ostensibly abated the problem or went through the appeals process and didn't have another problem. So I think, by and large, this ordinance is working very, very much. I mean, that's a stat, in my opinion, that certainly works in our favor. So now Saul is going to provide a different perspective as well. The other suggestion from the mayor's communication, former councilman's communication, would be that we ought to somehow increase the penalties for commercial establishments because there is this perception that perhaps they're just paying the fines as a cost of doing business. And speaking to the ordinance itself, Saul's going to shed some additional light on that. Is that all right? Can you have the floor?
Yes, in 1 second, I want to make sure that we got all these numbers correct. So, only 5 of the 222 letters were sent to chronic nuisance conditions. Of 5 of those 222 were commercial properties.
Correct.
9 of those 222 were repeat offenders.
Repeat residential, sorry.
Yes.
5 of those were repeat offenders for commercial properties. 9 of them were repeat offenders for residential properties. Everyone
Okay.
else was a single, one nuisance letter or nuisance declaration, one nuisance warning or nuisance declaration, and that was it.
Okay, I get that part. I just want to, okay, so, but that's important. Only 5 of those 222, those were repeat commercial properties.
Correct. And those are Oak Tree Manor, Putin Bay, Lakewood, had 2. There was,
And those, they're really working on those. They have been putting an awful lot of money into that
frankly,
establishment.
these were.
In fact, the mayor granted reconsideration in both of those requests.
At the nuisance abatement appeals committee.
At the
that committee.
reconsideration
Got it.
Step.
That stage in the process.
Mhm.
18900 Detroit, 3 different units in that large apartment building on the west end. Really wasn't, it's hard to treat that as a repeat offender because it's a big apartment building.
Yes.
And the nuisance conditions
I address.
arose from 3 separate apartments, one time each in that building. And they've ostensibly been addressed because there's no additional activity on those at this point. McCarthy's, which is a bar at Edwards in Detroit, had 3. And it is true they were all paid. Let me come up with the last one for you.
I'm hoping it's in Ward 4.
And that would be
11811 is another one.
Detroit?
Lake, 11811. And it's a multi-unit.
And that would be 5?
although different owners.
Yeah, I think they changed ownership.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right. So
Those are
let's
old.
add 1 to that
Okay.
number 5. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 6? That's okay.
3 different owners on that property.
It is because
Nicholson's
it just
the viaduct,
jogs. Yes, and that's the one that's north of Detroit.
Right.
I know exactly which one that is, and actually, he's actually come to the, he had a hearing,
Yes, right.
and then he got another couple complaints.
But we haven't
Great.
had any in a while.
Great,
Right.
that's good.
Okay,
Just curious.
so that
Okay.
does give you a general sense, though,
Yeah.
of where we are with this ordinance.
And I appreciate that then, so 15 of the 222 are repeats, the others are in
Make that-
first,
Yeah, what was
well, it was 9 and 5, which would have
Yeah,
been 14,
9 and
now it's
6,
9,
that's
6,
right.
15.
That's correct.
So, but the big key in this is that are the police, and the police are continuing to train on this, they're continuing to,
Both Chief Malley and now Captain Cerisi have done a great job of, notifying me right away when these things arise and coordinating with a lot of the other departments, so,
great.
yeah.
Because they're critical to this really working, and I think that's, we're seeing more and more that it is working, and that's interesting to me. And I have not printed out your sheet for a long time, but that is something for the record, that Andrea regularly gives us a copy of this, makes it available, or will make it available if we ask. And so it's just interesting to me over time how much more frequently it is being used, which is really good. And we have another one that's on email for today, so that's great, that's helpful to me.
Let me also suggest that as the administration, and we'll have council's input, make no mistake about that, develops this landlord manual that's going to go live very soon. I can tell you, having reviewed it for the last time, just this morning, mentions the chronic nuisance ordinance at least 3 times in this thing. In this manual, which really discusses the best practices for landlords in Lakewood. It reminds them that you've got to do a better job on the front end getting good tenants so that you can avoid these kinds of problems from the city on the back end. So that's I think it's important we're getting the message out there. I think when people get either is it the chief's letter or yours, Andrea, when you first notify them of chronic nuisance?
It's our letter from the mayor's office.
From the mayor's
It's
office.
my letter, right, on
Okay.
behalf of the mayor and council.
I think that frankly is, by and large, with these few exceptions, doing the
Right,
doing the
people
trick.
have been calling, very responsive when they get the letter, calling to share what they're doing and if they're surprised what they plan on doing, so, I think it's been, very productive as well.
I do too.
And neighbors are noticing too, neighbors who live next to these places, so they've been very grateful.
I agree, and I know it's made a difference in some of my neighborhoods. And it certainly works a lot better. When I first started, I had an agreement with Chief Malley that he kind of tracked on the east end what was happening, and then we came up with a standard letter, but he sent a letter to whoever the homeowner or landlord was, saying, did you know we've been at your place 3 times? We used 3. This is the same kind of, it was what I did in my neighborhoods before this. And the response was amazing, because some of the people really did not know. And I think that now we're seeing, certainly that it's codified, that this is better than it was, even when it was first enacted, I think, all those years ago by someone who's no longer in council, that it's even stronger, so.
It's
Anyway,
much stronger.
It's much stronger, twice it's become stronger, I think. Saul, that was it, I guess, for her end, so if you want